is midnight in Washington, 5 in London, and 2 on a Friday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Moon Gan-young. Let's get a check of the main stories we're following at this hour. Despite Pyongyang's threat to call off an upcoming round of family reunions if Seoul and Washington go ahead with an annual military drill, a group of South Koreans crossed the border into the north to prepare for the humanitarian event. Now, the Virginia House of Delegates approves a bill requiring the State Board of Education to only approve textbooks that use two names for the body of water between Japan and Korea, Sea of Japan and the East Sea. That means that new textbooks in the U.S. state could start reflecting the change as early as next school year. And the much-anticipated 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi kicks off in just a few hours. Now, before the games begin, we'll take a look at what's happening in and around the Russian city and the run-up to the global event. We'll have those stories and more, but first, let us begin right here on the Korean Peninsula. Now, preparations for the upcoming family reunions for those separated since the Korean War are underway, with a team of South Korean engineers departing for the reunion site earlier this morning. But there is no guarantee at this point that there will be no hiccups before the reunion event currently slated for the third week of February. ARIRANG News Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sang-hee starts us off.
With less than 2 weeks left until the reunions for families separated since the Korean War, 64 South Korean officials crossed the border on Friday morning to check the facilities at the reunion site in the north. The engineers will make sure that the electricity and communication lines at the Mount Kimgang Resort are up and running well in time for the reunions. Late Thursday night, the two Koreas confirmed that 85 South Koreans and 95 North Koreans will take part in the event. South Korea's Unification Ministry explained that some family members selected last year are unable to make the trip this time, as they have passed away or have fallen sick. Millions of Koreans were separated from their families during the Korean War more than 6 decades ago. Around 70,000 South Koreans, most of whom are now in their 80s, are on a waiting list to see their loved ones one last time. But will the reunions take place from February 20th to the 25th as planned? Just a day after the Koreas agreed to resume the reunions, North Korea called on the South to halt an upcoming annual military drill with the United States and threatened to reconsider the agreement. The reunion dates coincide with Seoul and Washington's Key Resolve exercises, which begin in the last week of February every year. South Korea said that the annual military exercises are purely defensive in nature and reiterated that it would deal with the North's objections to the drills separately from the family reunions. North Korea has a history of pulling the plug on such meetings in the past. Just last September, Pyongyang canceled a round of family reunions just 4 days before the event, disappointing hundreds of people on both sides of the border. If held, it would have been the first reunion event since 2010. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
Meanwhile, President Park Geun-hye has urged North Korea not to cause any more sorrow to the families separated by the Korean War by canceling an upcoming round of reunions. Speaking at the presidential office of Cheong Wa Dae this morning, the president said she was delighted that the North had accepted Seoul's proposal to resume the reunions, but warned that the North could cancel the event or change the schedule abruptly, using the Seoul-Washington's joint military drills as an excuse. Now, she emphasized that obstacles have appeared whenever there have been good signs in inter-Korean relations in the past, and said the South should remain on full alert for any possible provocations from the North. Meanwhile, recent satellite images indicate North Korea is nearly done upgrading its main rocket launch pad and could complete construction by next month or April. Citing an image on its website 38 North, the U.S. Korea Institute at Johns Hopkins University says an 11th level has been added to the launch pad in Dongchangni at the northwest coast Seoul launch site. Now, the modification would allow a long-range rocket of up to 50 meters in length to be accommodated, which is larger than the 30-meter Unha-3 rocket that was launched by the North back in 2012. The institute said the Unha-9, a slightly larger model, could be launched once construction is done but that it will take the North years to build much bigger rockets. And for some positive news, the lower house in the U.S. state of Virginia has passed a bill requiring new school textbooks in the state to use both the Korean name East Sea and the Japanese name Sea of Japan for the body of water between the two countries. The state governor's signature is now all the bill needs to take effect as law. Our Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
Starting with the next school year, students in the U.S. state of Virginia will very likely learn that the body of water between Korea and Japan is known not only by the Japanese name Sea of Japan, but also by the Korean name East Sea. The Virginia House of Delegates passed a bill by a wide margin of 81-15 on Thursday, requiring that the state education board only approve textbooks that use both names. Virginia House District Delegate Mark Kim explained what the bill means for Koreans.
When they opened up the textbooks of their children and they saw that a map that reminds them of their oppression, that reminds them of the invasion, that reminds them of that body of water that was crossed by the Japanese to come and annex that nation for 35 years.
The State House and the Senate, which approved a similar bill late last month, will now send the bill to Governor Terry McAuliffe for him to sign it into law. During his election campaign last year, the governor spoke in favor of the Korean view and has indicated he will sign on the dotted line. The bill will produce a seemingly minor change in school texts, but the Korean government and the large Korean American community in Virginia are hailing the revision as they consider the Japanese name to be a legacy of Japan's imperialistic past. Japan had threatened to suspend investment in Virginia if the state legislature approves the bill.
We have to celebrate the passage of the bill and be proud of our 150,000 Korean Americans that led the victory.
This is the first time such a bill has been passed by a state legislature in the United States. The bill also goes against the State Department's policy of only using one name, in this case the Sea of Japan, largely for the sake of clarity. Korean media outlets are reporting that the bill's passage will give the Korean American community a stronger voice. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
Now, you may remember Korea's tech giant Samsung sealing a deal with Google on patents. Well, the electronic giant has inked another patent cross-licensing deal, this time with Cisco Systems, a world leader in networking. This in a bid by both tech firms to minimize legal disputes and focus on innovation. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics has signed a 10-year patent cross-licensing deal with Cisco Systems. The deal comes days after similar agreements between Samsung and Google and another between Cisco and Google. The deals are expected to give the firms more room to innovate without worrying about legal disputes over intellectual property. Samsung went to court 38 times last year for patent disputes, and its legal battle with Apple that spans more than 10 countries is dragging into its third year. Samsung has one of the largest numbers of patents in the world with around 100,000, while Cisco has around 9,700 and Google 50,000. Local media outlets in Korea say Samsung's recent cross-licensing deal will give Samsung and Cisco time to prepare for the latest trend in the tech world, the Internet of Things, in which products ranging from cars to household goods are connected to the Internet or electronic devices. Cisco is one of the leading companies in the Internet of Things. John Chambers, Cisco's chairman and CEO, said last month during his keynote at the Consumer Electronics Show, the Internet of Everything will forever change our daily lives. For businesses, Chambers said it would be a $19 trillion opportunity. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
Now, taking a brief look at how the local stock market is doing at this hour. Seoul shares inched higher in early trading on this Friday after U.S. data eased worries about the world's largest economy, but a batch of worse-than-expected corporate earnings limited rises. As of 1:30 p.m. Korea time, the benchmark Kospi was up nearly 0.5% at 1916.5, while the tech-heavy Kosdaq was also trading higher by nearly 1%. Now, on the foreign exchange counter, the Korean currency was trading stronger against the greenback at roughly 1,076 won. Well, Ssangyong Motor, Korea's fourth largest automaker, may have to reinstate more than 150 workers who were laid off 5 years ago after a court here ruled that their dismissal was invalid. The Seoul High Court on Friday ruled in favor of the 153 workers, overturning an earlier ruling after they filed a suit saying that their dismissal by the company in 2009 was unreasonable because the auto company had overstated its losses, among other things. Well, the auto company plans to appeal that case. In 2009, the company fired about 2,600 workers after it was put under court receivership following the 2008 global financial crisis. Of them, about 460 took leaves of absence without pay, while about 1,900 workers chose to retire and about 160 were dismissed.
All of the day's important events. Events close to home, around the world.
Second half last, figure out what winners.
The arts and culture scene and the heart of global business.
Experts added that
ARIRANG News has your whole day covered.
the legislature will convene a plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government.
The opening ceremony for the Winter Games in Sochi is now just hours away, but the run-up to the Games has been somewhat tense with boycotts and construction, security concerns, and Russia's controversial policy on homosexuality. Our Son Jung-in gives a rundown on what's happening in the last hours before the big Games.
The wait is finally over, and with or without controversy, the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics kick off on this Friday. Security has been elevated in the lead-up to the Games, with the U.S. placing temporary restrictions on all liquids from carry-on bags to non-stop flights to Russia. The ban comes a day after U.S. officials warned explosives could be smuggled on flights in toothpaste or cosmetic tubes by terrorists. Despite the ongoing security concerns, the Olympics organizers say a record 44 world dignitaries will be at the opening ceremony, triple the amount that attended the 2010 Vancouver Games. Those who will be in attendance include Chinese President Xi Jinping and Ukraine's embattled President Viktor Yanukovych. Many Western leaders have been put off by Russia's anti-gay laws and are skipping the Games. Among those not attending the ceremony are U.S. President Barack Obama, French President François Hollande, and British Prime Minister David Cameron. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon will be there. He called for an open and equal Games at a session of the International Olympic Committee on Thursday, saying everyone should join together to fight discrimination against lesbians, gays, or bisexual and transgender people. Meanwhile, Korea's Ministry of Science, together with the Korea Aerospace Research Institute, has unveiled high-resolution images taken by the country's ARIRANG-3 satellite of the Sochi Olympic venue. The pictures show the main stadiums and other sports facilities where the Winter Games will begin, with the opening ceremony starting at 1:14 a.m. Saturday, Korea time. The Sochi Olympics wrap up on February 24th. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
Now, when Typhoon Haiyan swept through the Philippines last year, killing more than 6,000 people and leaving millions more displaced, the Korean government wasted no time lending a helping hand. Hundreds of engineers and military personnel from Korea were dispatched to the hardest-hit areas, and their mission continues to this day. Our Kim Hyun-bin follows us this report from Tacloban.
The Philippines were slammed by one of the deadliest storms in recent history, Typhoon Haiyan, in November of last year. The storm destroyed practically everything in its path and killed thousands of people. 3 months have passed since that terrible day, but ships remain eerily abandoned on land, and thousands of homes that once made a thriving community sit empty and uninhabitable. But as the saying goes, through darkness comes light, and through fear comes hope. And a military unit from Korea is working day and night to help this region and its residents get back to something approaching normality. Scores of Korean military engineers and medics are based here in Tacloban, a city decimated by Haiyan, under the mission code name Operation Aral Angels. Their goal is to rebuild basic infrastructure, no easy task in an area akin to a post-apocalyptic nightmare. The Aral unit was sent to help people in desperate need, but also to repay an old debt.
우리 아라오 부대는 We came here to pay back for the sacrifices made by the Philippine troops that fought and shed blood for our freedom during the Korean War.
Despite the sheer scale of the task ahead, it's unfortunate that this team are the only foreign troops lending a hand in the area at this time.
Many forces came for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then left. But the commitment of the government of the Republic of Korea for 1 year is really unprecedented, and everybody in the world is going to look towards this involvement as a model case for the future.
From schools to hospitals, Korean and Filipino engineers are working in sync, and it seems there's nothing they can't fix. But these are just the first steps. The people of the city have expressed high hopes about what this unit can achieve over the duration of their assignment here. This newly rebuilt elementary school was the work of the ARIRANG unit. By the year's end, the unit plans to build 50 schools in this area. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News, Tolosa.
Now, on a cultural note, the New York Philharmonic Orchestra is launching its 2-week tour of Asia with 2 concerts in Seoul, its first appearance in Korea in 5 years. Our cultural correspondent Park Geun-hye got a sneak peek of the concerts.
It's the oldest symphony orchestra in the United States and one of the oldest in the world. And this year, the New York Philharmonic Orchestra is kicking off a 2-week tour of Asia in Seoul. The orchestra has 2 concerts in Korea with a diverse repertoire that includes 18th and 19th century masterpieces by Beethoven and Tchaikovsky and music by American composers like Gershwin and Bernstein. This is the orchestra's 11th visit to Korea since its first in 1978, and the second under its current music director Alan Gilbert, the first native New Yorker to hold a post since 2009. Gilbert said he enjoyed the last visit to Seoul as he felt a strong musical connection with Korean audiences.
What I've felt here when I've played concerts in the past is this kind of energetic concentration, which is really what you look for. It's just a culture that obviously values music very, very much, and you can sense that when you're here, and as musicians we love that.
25-year-old rising Korean pianist Da Sol made his New York Philharmonic debut with Beethoven's Piano Concerto No. 3.
For soloists like myself, it is such an opportunity to perform with such a great orchestra, and I'm very aware that it's an opportunity that doesn't come to everyone. I'm very honored and thankful to everyone who helped me to be here.
The orchestra will continue its Asian tour with concerts in 4 cities in Japan, including Tokyo and Osaka. The tour wraps up in Taipei, Taiwan on the 19th. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
Now, due to the Lunar New Year holiday, theaters have been packed for the last 2 weeks as viewers have been spoiled for choices with 4 big local releases competing with the hit Disney animation Frozen. Now, many Oscar-nominated films from America also found their way to Korean multiplexes in the busy cinema season as well. Film fans are also getting excited following rumors that the Hollywood blockbuster Avengers 2 will film in Seoul and cast a local actress as a villain in the comic book sequel. Well, it is Friday, and our film critic Piers Conran joins us again to discuss this news, the many films in theaters over the holiday, and tell us how things are going in the race for the Lunar New Year crown at the Korean box office. All right, Piers, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Now, before we head into our film news, why don't we talk a little bit about the death of Philip Seymour Hoffman? We're just getting news that the first vigil or the wake for him was celebrated or was remembered in the U.S. just hours ago with his girlfriend organizing the event.
Well, Philip Seymour Hoffman was this incredible actor. He was really one of my favorites, and when I heard about this a few days ago, his tragic death, I was very upset, and I'm sure many people around the world were. I know Hollywood is kind of reeling from his death. It was a shock. He was For 23 years, he abstained from any drug and alcohol use, and suddenly he dies of an overdose. I mean, he'll be remembered for his many great roles in the films of Paul Thomas Anderson, such as The Master, or the role he won an Academy Award for, Capote, from 2006. But of course, all the small supporting roles that people have recognized him in over the years. So he will truly be missed.
Right, and another unfortunate, I suppose, event is that he only had 7 days remaining until the shooting of the Hunger Games too.
That's true. He had they were shooting back-to-back the third and fourth of that series. He had completed photography on the third one and still had a week of filming for the fourth one. So they'll have to do something in post-production to kind of make up for that loss. He was also in the middle of shooting the first season of a new show which he was a star of, and from what I hear, kind of the soul of. So everyone involved in that, I'm sure they're a little worried, sad at his loss, but also a little worried about what their future is going to be in the immediate time.
Well, we will remember him for a very long time. Now, moving on to the box offices here in Seoul, or here in Korea, how is the race shaping up?
Well, over the Lunar New Year, it was an enormous time for the theaters. Actually, I think it was the biggest weekend of all time in the country. Almost 5 million people went to the theaters. That's 1 in 10 people in the country. It's pretty staggering for 3 days. It looked for a while that the race would end up being Frozen with the Disney animation up top, but it ended up being the local hit Miss Granny, which took the crown. But it was still very close between them. Besides that, the other Korean films did not do quite as well, although Man in Love and Hot Young Bloods also pulled in some pretty good numbers.
So other than these big films, what are some of the other names that are out in the theaters that we can choose?
Well, there's a number of Oscar movies that are coming out now. It's kind of that time where these films that are released around November and December in America eventually get rolled out to international territories in the months leading up to the actual Oscar ceremony. The big one at the moment in Korea is Inside Llewyn Davis, the new Coen Brothers film, which it cracked into the top 10, although it was in very much fewer theaters, less than 100. So that's been received very well. It's doing quite well. Another one was Martin Scorsese's The Wolf of Wall Street, which had a slightly bigger release, so it didn't fare extremely well. But again, those are two films that I would certainly recommend, and there will be a few more to come in the weeks ahead.
Not only that, quite a few foreign films have been, have been brought to the attention here in Korea as well. French, Japanese, Chinese, even.
Yes, there's a great variety of films at the moment. From France, the big one is probably Blue is the Warmest Color, also known as Adele. That was the Palme d'Or winner at the Cannes Film Festival last year. And just as the previous Palme d'Or winner, which was also a French film, Amour, did very well around this time last year. Now Blue is the Warmest Color is kind of filling that hole. It's doing very well in limited release. It's quite controversial because of its homosexual themes. It's also very long. It's 3 hours. Besides that, the Japanese film Like Father, Like Son was the most successful independent film of the last few months in Korea. In only a few theaters, it attracted over 100,000 viewers. That was also a film that was platformed at the Cannes Film Festival, very well received. And there's the new Jackie Chan film, Police Story 2014, continuing that long series of films which opened recently in China and just opened here in Korea as well.
And there's also a new animation, a homegrown that we've been hearing about, that's looking to compete with Frozen in the theaters. Now, is this really a Korean-produced film, and how does it stand a chance in competing with Frozen?
So this one was just released a week ago. It's called The Nut Job. It's a co-production between Red Rover, a Korean company, and Toonbox Entertainment, a Canadian one. The film opened in the States 2 weeks ago, where it had a pretty solid opening, as Frozen was kind of exiting from theaters and before the new film Lego Movie came out. So it did quite well, although with a much smaller budget than normal Hollywood animated films. It didn't fare quite so well here in Korea. Honestly, Frozen was just so strong, there was no space for another family film to come in.
We're hearing Frozen everywhere, even the OST.
Everyone's gone crazy for that song.
Well, there was a rumor that started last week that the new Avengers film is going to shoot some scenes here in Seoul, and one of the actresses, in the film would be a Korean one.
That's true. When I first heard that rumor, that's all I felt it was. It sounded like something that wasn't pretty unconfirmed. While it hasn't been explicitly confirmed by Disney in Korea, it does sound like this is happening because there have been preparations are afoot. Shooting is set to take place in Incheon. The Incheon city have confirmed that this is happening.
Oh, okay.
And also it will be taking place in Gangnam. They were looking for a Korean actress. 50 actresses auditioned. It appears that the lucky actress is Kim Soo-hyun, not to be confused with the actor Kim Soo-hyun.
Right.
She is a TV drama star who is well versed apparently in action choreography, not to mention a fluent English speaker, which makes her ideal for this part. The director will be coming over, that's Josh Whedon, as well as stars Robert Downey Jr. and Scarlett Johansson. So I'm sure people will be very excited. It's a big moment for local production crews in Korea as well to show what they can do on an international stage.
Definitely. So there will be another break for Korea's film industry, as well as this actress, because I'm sure that this will be the biggest break of her career.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure she's thrilled. I mean, this is instant international exposure. This film will definitely be the biggest film of that year. Not to mention it'll be a huge hit here. Every previous film in that series has done quite well here, including the Iron Man films there as well. So that'll be a very big event, and it could be very good for kind of Korean cinema going overseas a little as well, from terms of their technical stuff.
All right, Piers Conran, thank you so much for this week. We'll skip next week for Sochi, but we'll see you the week after that.
All right, see you then. I look forward to it.
All right, that's all from me at this hour. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I'll be back with more of the day's latest at 4 p.m. Korea time.